Well, thank you all for coming this morning to our second town hall of the autumn 2018 quarter. I'm really excited to see this big of a crowd right before the Thanksgiving break, so thank you for being here this morning. Today, I'm going to do a little bit of a special town hall. I'll have a guest or a co-conspirator helping me this morning. But in a response that you wanted to hear more about other campus things, today we're going to do a special campus presentation on charting our course, the second year report of our strategic plan. So I guess we'll just get started. What we plan to do is first talk about a little bit of introduction, some background, although most of you know about the plan now. Then we're going to recap the plan itself, and then talk about some specific aspects of the plan. The Strategic Plan Coordinating Committee that's been guiding that plan since its inception. We're going to talk about a new thing. I mean, it's not new we're actually been doing them, but we haven't gone live with what's actually happening with the initiatives that campus leadership is working on. We're going to talk a little bit about an evolving dashboard. We're going to make some clarity on the strategic planning funding over the entire time of the plan so far. We're going to recap all the financials of that, and then we'll open it up for questions and dialogue at the end. So that's the plan this morning. But before we get started, I need to thank a few people, because most of them, I believe, are in the room. But the strategic plan, you all know that I'm a little partial to the strategic plan. Like, duh, I really like our strategic plan. When I came to interview, I told you I would be doing this, and we stuck to it. But I haven't done any of this myself. It's been done by the entire campus. And I'd like to recognize again our people who started the plan by co-chairing the first group. That was Dr. Bonnie Becker and the Honorable Richard Wilkinson. I don't see Richard Wilkinson here, but they were the co-conspirators that started the plan, did a great job, and that plan was launched right in this room. You remember when Honest Abe came and launched the plan in 2016. Then we had volunteer leadership that first year. We had Professor Emeritus Marcy Lazari, and she's right here, and Kathleen Farrell, Associate Vice Chancellor, Student Enrollment Services. Is Kathleen here this morning? That led us through the first year of implementation. And then we went back to somebody we knew, and Bonnie Becker served as our inaugural Assistant Chancellor for Strategy and Assessment and got us through last year, and in a very excellent way. So let's thank all the people who've got us to this point so far. And I think we'll be welcoming and honoring and thanking some of the people that have been involved with SPCC in a few minutes. But now to the person that's leading the plan right now. This gentleman right here. He's not new to our campus. Most of you know him. I introduced Joe at the first town hall of the year, so I'm not going to formally introduce him again, but he's been serving as the Assistant Chancellor for Strategy and Assessment since September 1st. It's September 1st, doing a wonderful job, and we're going to hear about some of the fruits of that labor in a few minutes. But before I turn it over to Joe, I want to talk about a little bit that's been going on in the background. Our plan has not changed. We have the strategic plan that we first implemented in 2016. We all are beginning to know it. We know the 6 impact goals. And just a week and a half ago, in fact, it was a week ago Thursday, in this room, the Board of Regents were here, and we showcased our second year report to the Regents. Now, you might remember at the first town hall, we passed out this little document, and if you don't have one, we can get you one of these. This is just a quick update of year 2, but we tried to do a deep dive for our Board of Regents on what day? November 8th, I believe it was. November 8th. It was a week ago Thursday, right in this room. And we worked really hard at putting a presentation together. Brian worked on some slides with us. We put a presentation together that I started. I think Mentha Hines Wilson was second. Then she turned it over to James McShay, our new Assistant Chancellor for Economic Inclusion. He did a great job. Mentha did a great job. And then Jill talked about all the things going on in academic affairs. And then we kind of batted cleanup with Joe. And it was really, really good. But it was all overshadowed by our students. Our students did a wonderful job. Part of our presentation, we brought a faculty member, Matt Kelly. You guys know Matt Kelly in Urban Studies. He brought 2 of his students in, Augustine Canales and Leslie Kirk, I believe were the two students' names. And they did a presentation which was supposed to illuminate what the vice chancellors and I had talked about in the opening, about what we're trying to create as an entire student experience. So that was going to be a real example of what we do here at UW-Tacoma. So that was really good too, but then a regent asked the students, well, you know, this is all well and good, but tell us, what is really your experience like? What has UW-Tacoma meant to you? And boom, it was so good. Those students, and they were sincere, they were honest, they were transparent, they were authentic, and they said it changed their lives. They said they have never felt more appreciated than they came here. The faculty and staff at this institution has changed their lives, appreciated them, given them the tools to take it out into the world. It almost made me cry. It was so good to hear our students say that, because that's what we all work for. You know, we're all here not for ourselves, we're here for those students to help change their lives. Remember, our first impact goal says we want students to be able to achieve their dreams. We want to empower them to do that. So anyway, we had a great day, and as if that wasn't enough, then whenever you host the regents on your campus, you get an opportunity to talk. So I got 5 more minutes at the end to talk, but then your student body president gets 5 minutes. And Armin Papian, oh man, what a wonderful president we have. He talked about the collaboration with all of you, his goals on behalf of the students of this institution. It wasn't about Armin, it was about him trying to lead our students to achieve even higher things. That was really well received by the regents. And then, as if that wasn't enough, the other student body presidents get to talk, and then the graduate council representative gets to talk, and then the alumni president gets to talk. Well, fortunately for us, actually it's a really great guy, but fortunately for us, he had to leave at noon, so we had a pitch hitter come in. Oh shoot, forgot his name, just a second. That happened. Joe. How could I forget Joe? Joe Davis. Joe Davis, 2016, is the alumni trustee from this campus to the trustees of the Alumni Association for all of UW. So he's a 2016 graduate. He's now a deputy sheriff in Snohomish County, so if you ever get stopped for speeding, try to get stopped there and tell them you're a UW employee. But anyway, he got to talk about his experience at UW, and it was the same thing. He said it changed his life. He had 2 small kids. He had been in the military. He didn't think he was cut out to go to college, but somebody told him about Pierce College. He went over to Pierce, worked really, really hard, struggled, got deployed, had another baby, but then he heard about UW-Tacoma, and he came here, and he really appreciated his time here. So anyway, it was a great day for UW-Tacoma. So I'm proud of all of you for what you do. The students wouldn't have said that if they didn't mean it. So we are doing a good job here, and that's because of all you. So this year, oh, thank you. So this year, what I've been trying to do as your chancellor is to try to develop the strategic plan on both of its ends to bring it to the next level. The strategic plan, as you know, is a wonderful description of kind of our values, what we feel is important here, and there are 6 different impact goals that we hope to change over time, but the strategic plan doesn't really say why we're doing that, and it doesn't say how we're doing that. So over the past year, I've been working with the leadership team. We had 2 retreats for about a day and a half. Half was goofing around, and a day was at work. That's how you have to do retreats. You gotta entice them to come. So anyway, we did really hard work away from campus on developing the why and also developing the how. And I'm not gonna go into the details of the how because Joe's gonna do that in a minute, but he's gonna let me talk about the why. So what we've been trying to do is make a statement that talks about what we aspire to do here. And you know, that's dangerous to put this up on the board when you all haven't been involved with this yet, but it's a draft. I'll make sure it's a draft, it's real big in red there. But we've been working on a description of what we think we aspire to do as a campus. So let me read this to you. The University of Washington-Tacoma will establish its own unique UW brand by becoming the premier mid-sized public university campus in the country. It will accomplish this by operating at the intersection of access and excellence. That's a key phrase right there. as it provides transformative experiences in the nurturing, inclusive environment that boldly embraces the assets of our diverse student body. In addition to traditional research, the campus will champion public scholarship that includes our community partners and instills in our students not only a deep sense of belonging, but also inspires them to embrace the civic-minded and social justice principles of their learning experiences into their subsequent life and careers. So that clearly says what we're trying to become. So if we're trying to become that, then we ought to instill those 6 principles and those 6 impact goals of the plan. So I really like this. We don't know what we're going to do with it yet. It's still in draft form. We're going to talk about it at our next retreat in January and see. We can't go add it back to the document because that document was done by a group of people who was charged with doing that document. But we used our Board of Regents presentation to let them know subtly that this was our goal. But we had to do it subtly because we haven't talked to all you about it. Anyway, that's what we've been up to, and then I'm going to turn it over, I believe, to Joe now, and Joe is going to talk about the strategic plan in more detail. So thank you.
Okay, well, thank you. So I'd like to start by kind of honoring the work that many of you did on the strategic plan. How many people here were involved either in a committee or a meeting or some piece of the strategic plan? Raise your hand. So much of the room. This plan is our plan. It's not Mark's plan. He likes to claim it, but it is our plan, and there was a lot of hard work that has gone into it and that continues to go into it. I think that it did a good job of recognizing our values on the compass points up there: excellence, diversity, innovation, community, all centered around access. As well as our strategic priorities, which you'll notice the sticky notes that will come up later. There's going to be, this is participatory, it's not origami. So there are the 6, I like to refer to them as pillars. We refer to them as multiple things, but I like to call them pillars because they are what everything else stands on that we do here. So, I'd like to recognize the Strategic Plan Coordinating Committee. They are responsible for kind of these things in terms of moving the plan forward and keeping it moving forward. And the leadership this year, so Marcy Lazari, Liz Hansen, Lauren Montgomery, Christy Peralta, Bonnie Becker, and then there are 2 co-chairs for each of the 6 pillars of the plan: Kathleen and Erica, Allie and Lisa, Tehran and Altaf, James and Linda, Deanna and Ricky, Carl and Ben. So thank you to you and to those kind of who have done this, who did this last year, in the first year of the plan as well. Thank you for your work in continuing to help us move forward. So I want to talk about some of the initiatives, but to lead into that, I want to give some of the observations that I've made in the 2.5 months in this job. So, and it's my observations, it's my perspective, given 11 years of running the Center for Leadership and Social Responsibility and the 2.5 months in this job, it's my unique perspective on it. But number one is that there are a lot of great people doing a lot of great work on this campus. It is actually quite stunning. So I think we owe ourselves a round of applause. But part of that, part of what happens when you're doing that great work and you get focused like that is that we have a tendency to create silos. When we talk about silos, we always refer to them in the negative and the negative pieces of silos. But my family came to Washington from a small farming community in southeast South Dakota called Ramona, South Dakota. And if you've been there, we're probably cousins. It's that small. But when I was there back in the 70s, the silos were the things that the community's proud of. Silos allow farming communities to concentrate their crops, to preserve their crops, to concentrate efforts. It's a sign of wealth in those small communities. But in organizations, silos can sometimes create isolation, where we lose a sense of collective impact and collective momentum moving forward. And one of the first meetings that I came to in this job, there was a lot of talk about all of these initiatives that people were moving forward on campus, and at least half of them I had never heard of. And I thought, well, one of the ways that we can break out of those silos in terms of understanding the collective impact that we are making on campus is to be transparent about that. So I'm going to share the work that we've done on that with you, but before I do that, I'd like to recognize someone who's not here because he's sporting a great cold this morning, is James Woods and the Creative Services team for helping to put together a website that makes transparent all of the initiatives, all of the leadership initiatives. There are more initiatives than this going on this campus. But we took a list of, it started at about 74, I think, and we're down to 64 now, because there's been some condensing and combining. But what I wanted to do was to make transparent to the campus what are all the things that we're moving forward. So we created this webpage. I'm not going to go through all of them, but I want to demonstrate it for you. Oops, that one. So each of the initiatives, each of those 64 initiatives is listed here in this screen. There are a lot of them. And each of these initiatives, when you go to it, so let's pick Husky Experience. So each of them then talks about what that initiative is. There's not a lot more here now. Ultimately, we will have links to other how kind of peel back that onion and go a little bit deeper on each of them. But if you notice down here on the side, so we can go through, offer inclusive pedagogy training for faculty, access student academic support systems, assess, expand study abroad opportunities and engagement. So this is the section for the student initiatives. Each of them has their own page and their own description that outlines what those are. You can sort them. I'm interested in scholarship. So you can sort them by just the scholarship initiatives and look at what those initiatives are. I'm interested in what aligning the promotion and tenure guidelines with the mission is about. It is a way that we can put out there to you, the campus community and the broader community, what it is that we're working on. It's not perfect. It needs more information, more work. Not all of these initiatives are happening at the same time. There's sequencing that is going on with these, but this kind of puts in one place a lot of the initiatives that are happening on this campus. The other thing that is not demonstrated here is this is the initiatives of the leadership team. I know that there are initiatives going on within each of the academic units, within each of the units on this campus that we haven't captured yet, that I'd like to capture. So, so that we can start to put that on there. So I like James put a contact Joe button. Thanks, James. So contact Joe. Let me know, and we can continue to add the initiatives that are going on that are making an impact in each of these impact goals for our community. I did that wrong. So, dashboard. So those were the initiatives. Now I want to talk about a dashboard, and this is where you get to play along in your seats. So we have developed dashboard measures that have been the work of a lot of you who raised your hands earlier, a lot of committees. And I'll tell you that what we have that I'm going to show you is a very beginning of being able to demonstrate some of the metrics around this. But there's a commitment to ensuring that we are accountable to ourselves. So what I'm going to do is show you by impact goal area what the metrics are that we've captured. Know that each of these are individual numbers. There are, again, layers of that onion if you go deeper and dig into those. But what I'd like you to do is, as we go through these, I'm hoping that you think, well, what about such and such? Write down on those, because I have been to enough Chancellor's Town Halls to know that when we get to the Q&A slide, that people aren't going to want to say anything. So that's what the sticky notes are for. Write down what you think you would like to see in terms of metrics and measures that we can begin to capture. I'll tell you, some of these boxes on here, I've put the measurement and they're blank, and it's because we know that it's an important metric to measure, and we don't have it yet. We're not there yet. So what we're trying to do is to create a culture of good metrics and measurement on this campus. So this is not our dashboard. So I put this up there though because I wanted to talk about what dashboards are for. In your car, when you look at your dashboard gives you the key things that you need to know at a glance that are responsible for your safety at that point. But how fast are you going? How much gas do you have? Is your engine overheating? What are the key things that you need to know? A lot of newer cars now, back in the old cars, that was about it. There were a couple of dials and that was it. Now you can see like when your birthday is, and there's all kinds of stuff in those things. But those are buried deeper. The dashboard itself gives kind of the key metrics that you need to see. So, our students' dashboard. I'm not going to read it to you, but these are some of the key metrics: persistence to graduation, time to degree, and pathways to promise participation. So these are head counts of participants. So, and again, these are the first 2 years of the plan. We will continue to kind of roll the numbers out as we move forward, and they won't be, when we finally create the actual dashboard, it won't be presented in this way. This is just the easiest way for me to show it today. Students, this is about I couldn't fit all this in one slide. So this is scholarship dollars. So how much general and merit scholarships dispersed, and then percent of scholarship funds used. That is a number that if as our change goes, I think positive change is good on that one, that we're using a higher percentage of funds available. Again, if you think about what are the metrics, what are the key metrics that we need to understand related to moving us forward on our students' impact goal. Make notes of that. Before you leave, go stick it on the appropriate poster. Scholarship. So this first one, this should be a big asterisk next to it. So these are courses as defined by the High Impact Practices group, their work this past summer in the communities of practice of identifying courses that they think are undergraduate research. Those still have to go through the faculty process and for kind of official designation on that. But we thought, this is a beginning point of those courses. How have we done in terms of the percent of student credit hours in undergrad research? Because that is a high impact practice. The more we can do that for our undergrads, the more successful they're going to be. Faculty publications, we started tracking in 2017. I can guarantee you that number's not complete, but it's the metric that we have. We will get better at counting that as we move forward. Grant funding, this is straight out of Tehran's report from this last year. And digital commons downloads, another metric, so that the works that are in the libraries, the digital commons site, numbers of downloads of those publications. It's a measure. No measure is ever perfect. It doesn't give you a total picture, but they all give you something. So, and that number should go up dramatically as we include more works. I'm your salesperson, Justin. As we include more works in digital commons. So, and actually that metric will probably change. You know how stores do same store sales so that they're comparing apples to apples if they've increased more stores? Well, we'll have to change that metric the way we present it as we move forward. Communities, again, this is from the S service designation defined by the communities of practice this summer. This is percent of student credit hours in service courses as defined by that group. Still have work to do on that. We've gone down a little bit as a percent of student credit hours. So I like metrics that tell you something that you can do, that give you something that you can do to make changes immediately. Metrics are oftentimes historical looking. They're looking back at what happened. But I like metrics that allow you to say, what could we do to increase that in this coming year? So it's a good metric. And then the annual number of students engaged in internships for credit, we were working on this yesterday. That is a difficult number to get. But I wanted to keep this up here because I want to get us better at making sure that we are capturing the pieces that we think are important to capture. And I think that's one of them, because this is an indicator of how engaged our students for credit are out in the community. An indicator. Equity, percent of minority faculty. This is off of the public profiles, UW public profiles, and I kept both numbers up there. 24.4% minority faculty, 13% underrepresented minorities. That was for 2016, 17, 18. Most of you who have had to deal with Workday know that we're still figuring out how to make Workday work. So that is a metric that we're trying to get in terms of after the transition. So percent of minority staff, again, a number that I think is important for us to measure, and we have working on accessing that data. Seed Institute training went down by 1 this last year. It'll be interesting over time to see how that improves. And James and I talked about, we included the LGBTQ awareness training. This is faculty, staff, and students who participated. Started that last year. 86, it's a good baseline, and we'll see moving forward. I think that as we start to measure and be more transparent and public about our metrics, it will drive us to include or to increase the things that are important to us. Culture, professional development opportunities, and number of people participating in professional development opportunities. This is straight from Deanna. Is Deanna here? No. So some good increases there. Growth, enrollment, easier number to get, and I had to change this because we do have 2018-19. These are fall enrollment numbers. Each year was about 3.7% growth. We are on a good trajectory of being somewhere around a 4% target for growth. Number of degree pathways, we increased by 16% in this last year. And square feet, this is a estimated number. I took about what the stated number of square feet of Tacoma paper and stationery is and subtracted it from the number from before that. So that is number of active square feet. It again is a metric of growth. I think there are many more that we probably have. So again, if you think of other metrics that you think it would be important for us as a campus to measure, put them on the sticky notes. So strategic SIF funding, SIF 2.0. 2 weeks ago, I sent out the notice around that process. I just wanted to quickly go through that. Just the details. There's $100,000 in funding available. Awards will be between $2,500 and $10,000. There's these 4 kind of criteria. Initiatives that are focused on students most directly, proposals with the impact on 1 or more impact goals, proposals that effectively collaborate with internal or external partners, and proposals that have the most opportunity for lasting impact. So, and then here's the timeline for that. So December 20th timeline for deadline for submissions. The committee will give, there's holidays that get in the way there. So first part of January, the committee will review those. At the end of January, do notification of awards. Basically, you'll have through the end of the year to complete, through the end of the calendar year to complete projects. And Mark.
Thanks, Joe. Thank you, Joe. Don't go far. We want you to come back up here in a minute. So there's been a lot of questions about the strategic plan funding, how we funded that. So I am going to try to explain to you exactly how we funded it since the plan began. So to do that, we need to go back to fiscal year 16. That was actually 2015. I came in March. The budget process was pretty well developed at that point. We hadn't even started working on a strategic plan yet, but I knew that I wanted to have some person or some office to coordinate the strategic plan going forward. So I insisted that we put $100,000 of continuing money set aside for when we got the plan done and we could hire somebody in this role and start using this plan to guide us as a campus. Well, you all know that it took us more than a year to get the plan done. So when we got to the end of the year, that money was still sitting there unspent, but I insisted we leave it there because someday we're going to have somebody that's going to coordinate the strategic plan. We also put $50,000 in one-time money, and Ty hates me using that term, but that's what we used to call it 3 years ago. But it's money like out of the reserve that you can spend if you send 10 people to a conference or something like that. It's not continuing money every year. You spend it once and it's gone. So we set that aside. We did not spend that either because we were working on the plan that year. So we put these two at the end of the year into reserve in case we need them the following year. Then the following year, the plan was starting to emerge. It was March and April of 2016 by then. The strategic plan committee that was working on that was getting close to having a final document. So my role as chancellor is I put forward a request to put $200,000 of permanent money into the strategic plan for things that we would do as a result of the strategic plan. So there you see $200,000 and $100,000 set aside for that one-time money again. Well, we did launch SIF 1.0. We made $200,000 available. After the committee worked on that, they only ended up spending 144 of that 200 of permanent money. So we had a little bit left over because we had some from the year before. But look what they did in terms of the one-time money. They expended quite a bit of one-time money and put us a little bit in the deficit at the end of that first year of implementing the strategic plan. So the third year, I was pretty consistent and pretty, what are words to describe me? I was, what's that? Persistent, pretty persistent in making sure that we continued this once we got started. So we put $200,000 more permanent money in the strategic plan and $100,000 more, just like we did the year before, in temporary money. By this time, we were able to hire a full-time assistant chancellor for strategy and assessment, so that became, some of the funding was to pay for that person in that office. There was money that went along with that role to pay for initiatives that the person in that office wanted to do. So when we got to the end of the year, though, we still had quite a bit of permanent money available for strategic planning initiatives. We had a deficit at the beginning of the year, so that cut into the money, the one-time money that we had that year. So when we finished 2017, we only had $13,000 left there. So now, this year. So in this year's budget cycle, you all know that we're getting a little tighter and tighter and tighter on funds. So I backed off and agreed to $100,000. So we essentially cut it in half this year. So the funding is $100,050 new funding this year. We have a permanent director. It didn't start till September. So that's the money that we're spending on the office. Joe just talked about SIF 2.0, so we're going to use $100,000 for that particular purpose. And all the other SIFs are continuing, so those monies are already captured. And then, since we had that, if I go back to the previous slide, oh, that's the next slide. Let me go back to the previous slide. See, we had this substantial backlog of permanent money. So what we talked about on the leadership team is one of our biggest priorities on campus is to launch a community engagement office. Poor Linda, in her 2 years in that role, the office was essentially her. No spending money or anything like that, and we did a great job, but we really wanted to launch an office, have some infrastructure for community engagement. So we actually designated $200,000 of the strategic planning money and push that over to our new Office of Community Engagement, which is being led by Professor Medeiros right now. And then Joe and his office has some one-time money for this year for initiatives that they put together in addition to the SIFs. So that leaves us almost even this year. And then we do each budget year as a year, but we propose 2 years because it's a biennium. So we did propose for next year 150 again, but we'll have discussions about that in March, February and March to see if that's for sure what we want to do. But right now, we're proposing to do 150 again next year. So what this tells you, over 5 years, we've now allocated, or we will, by this time next year, have allocated $700,000 in permanent money to the strategic plan, and 610 of that will be committed if SIF 2.0 fulfills all of its requests. So at this time next year, or a little bit later next year, there will be this much money available in the strategic plan. So I know that was fast, but we'll make these slides available if you need them to understand that, and I'm happy to talk about that, but that's how we've spent that money on the strategic plan. So I wanted to say one more thing about the initiatives and one more thing about the dashboard and one more thing about SIF 2.0. The initiatives, again, that Joe showed, those are just the leadership team. We're more than happy to spread that out. I think the SIF initiatives are they already up there?
I'm not sure.
Okay, but we'll put those up there. That will be another category, but then we're thinking over time, we'll put initiatives of the different academic units and other things too. So this is just a start, and these initiatives are part of how I manage the leadership team. These are things that people on my team have agreed to do that advance our strategic plan. So Joe just showed the statement about what the initiative is, but we have an entire Word document behind that that tells who's responsible, who they're working with that initiative, what priority it is for that year, if it's 1, 2, or 3 priority, and then what year we plan on getting it done. So there's more information behind those in a Word document. As far as the dashboards, those are preliminary. It's something we've been trying to do since the beginning of the strategic plan, and now we have it out there. So hopefully you'll engage with that, and if you don't like what we're measuring, or if you can suggest other things, we're more than happy to maneuver that over time and change it. But I know we do need some measurements to keep us accountable for how our strategic plan is moving forward. And then I'm excited about SIF Point 2. It took us a year to get to the stage where we're ready to do it again, but Joe's got his team organized, and that's ready to go. So now come on back up, Joe. We'd be glad to take questions about any of these things from the audience.
Hi. So I had I suppose a related question. We've heard that the Center for Equity and Inclusion is going to be moving into the Snoqualmie building, and that is a productive move for the center. It sounds good. However, we've also heard that this is going to move the TLC. We're not opposed to a move, but we're wondering really where the TLC is going to be moving, if this has been planned, if this is going to be discussed, if the TLC and the library are part of this discussion, and where the budget for this move for both the center and the TLC is coming from, since it was mentioned about silos and isolation on campus, the TLC and the CEI would be really great partners, and so it seems counterproductive to, as it's been said, to prioritize the CEI over the TLC if we have to share the same space, if we want to work together, which we do. So my question is mainly about budget, considerations for making it equitable, and considerations for construction if the TLC were to move to first floor Snoqualmie, whether that would close the TLC temporarily for the move, that sort of thing. What is the thinking about that? We'd like some transparency.
Sure.
Please. So.
Do you want me to take that first? Sure. Okay. So that was a long question. Thank you for that question, but it's going to get a long answer because it's kind of complicated. So when I came in 2015, just before I came in March, about February, I received a report where the campus had done a study to look at the Office of Diversity. It was called the Center for Diversity at the time. It wasn't Equity and Inclusion yet. So the study is labeled the Center for, what was it called? Diversity Resource Center, that's what it was. The Diversity Resource Center was what it was called. So that report said that the space that they had was not sufficient. So I knew that before I even got here. So we worked on that. Sharon was in the role that James is in now. We worked on that for several months, and we asked space planning to do an analysis, and they did do an analysis. It took a little bit of time, but when they did the analysis, they came back and offered to move it another place where it would consolidate it all together, but the actual square footage of the entire Diversity Resource Center, which was the name at the time, was less than it is now. So that wasn't sufficient to me, that wasn't sufficient to the staff, so we didn't accept that plan. Then comes the student body leadership from last year who made that a priority. You've been chancellor for several years here. Why haven't you done something to enlarge and consolidate what now is the Center for Equity and Inclusion? So I worked through that, not fast enough for our student leaders, so I committed very publicly one day out on the staircase to move and expand the Diversity Resource Center, or the Center for Equity and Inclusion. How many were there when I did that? Some of you were there, okay. I committed to that, so I can't go back on my word. So we are moving the center and expanding it. So we're trying to do that in a very organized way. We hired a consultant. The consultant came to campus. James was hired by this time, and they did some charrettes in Tacoma Paper and Stationery Building on the first floor. How many came to those charrettes? Excellent. Well, what people said at the charrettes is the fourth floor of Tioga may not be the best place to move that. That was clear. So space planning, all the leadership team, we took that seriously. It may not be the best place. What is the best place? That's where we got to. So that happened over the summer. So we had a meeting in maybe September of my leadership team and decided that yes, the fourth floor is probably not the best place. So let's look at something else. And we all agreed 100% in that room that day, and we brought the space planning people. They also agreed 100%. Fourth floor is probably not the best place. What is the best place? That's where we are right now. And yes, there's all kinds of rumors. We're going to have additional charrettes. We're going to have additional interactions with the library, the TLC staff to find out the best place. But you are correct. One of the places we've come to right now is in Snoqualmie, in a partnership with the library, with TLC. So that's definitely on the table, but we're going to continue discussions. My charge, though, to campus is I want CEI moved before next fall. Actually, I wanted it moved by this fall, but we always don't get what we want. But for sure, I've put on the table that it has to be somewhere, because by next fall, I will have been here 4 years and 4 months. And that's not acceptable to me to take that long to do something. So we're going to have more dialogue, but we need to have it quickly. So does that answer the budget? So the budget, we have a reserve. When I talk about the budget each year, what we're trying to get is so we spend a little bit less than we take in is the goal. So what we do with that money, if we spend a little bit less than we take in, we put it in the bank, so to speak, so that we can do capital projects on campus. So this will be significant. To move those offices somewhere else will come out of our campus reserve. And we'll do an estimate, and then the EBC, the Executive Budget Committee, will decide on yes or not or no, we will spend that amount of money. So that's as transparent as I can get. Does anybody else want to add anything to that?
Actually, I'll kind of repeat something that I talked with someone yesterday about, which is that I think this is an opportunity for us to fix 2 buildings that are that grew over time, so weren't planned as a whole. And this is an opportunity to kind of back up and say, okay, what makes sense? And the design charrette process will allow us to do things. You said something that I think is true, which is CEI and TLC, there's some synergies between those, but we can figure out where those synergies exist and how to use the space in a much more efficient and effective way. I think it's a really good opportunity. He's right, there's a lot of rumors around the decisions that have been made. The decision that's been made is that a decision needs to be made. That's my understanding of where things are.
And I think that's making folks a little uncomfortable, but I have to draw the line somewhere. I really want us to move somewhere that makes sense by next fall. So that's the only decisions that have been made. Other questions? Thank you for asking that.
Yeah, I have 2 questions, one for each of you. Joe, you showed us a few measures for the progress that we're making on our strategic impact goals. And I have a question about the scholarship funds. There was a significant increase in funds available, but then the percentage of funds used is relatively low, and I would love some context for why that is. So that's my question for you. And then for Mark, thank you for sharing the draft of the leadership statement. I noticed an absence of the word urban serving university, which is something that I think we've committed to as a campus, and so I was wondering about the sort of decision-making process that went into not calling us that anymore.
You go first.
So I'll do the scholarship dollars one first, which is that I got a lot of those numbers this past week, and I don't understand the meaning of them yet, but I wanted to put them up here kind of to start a discussion. Because actually your question is exactly my question around, well, the 2 questions. One is the jump from year over year, pretty significant increase, and then the percentage used. Are there things that we could be doing? Like I said, I like metrics that drive action. Are there things that we could be doing to get that differential smaller so that more of our available scholarship funds are being used? Because I'm pretty sure that there's no lack of need.
Thank you, and I'll try the second question. So we are not going anywhere inside the Urban Serving University. That's still very important to us. As I came in as your chancellor, I knew that Deborah had really elevated us into thinking that. It's in our strategic plan. It's all over it. I've joined that organization. I'm on the executive committee. I'm the treasurer now, and I would encourage you, when you search for your next chancellor, to make that a requirement that we are leaders in that field. And we are leaders. Just recently at the meeting a week and a half ago, Mentha Hines-Wilson and Professor Christine Stevens made a presentation at the USU tract in the APLU meeting. They did a great job talking about our wraparound services. We have no intentions of lessening our participation and standing in that organization. However, that being said, there are only 40 of those. There are 3,000 institutions in the United States. I think our aspirations are higher than just the USU. So our aspirational statement I think transcends the USU. We want to be the premier mid-sized public institution, I started to say in the Northwest. That's what we started with, but I think we want to be in the country. So there's no intention of dropping urban serving out of that, but we really want our own version of that. Does that make sense? Who else could explain that better that's been in these discussions? Anybody else want to jump in? You want to jump in?
Well, I guess I would note that that aspirational statement is not a new mission statement.
No.
Our current mission statement still exists.
Our current mission statement still exists. In fact, you could do a slide with our mission statement and an arrow down to that aspirational statement that shows how they're linked.
Yeah. That's a good point. And if you recall how we got the strategic plan, we went asking the big question first. And the big question is, where do we want this institution to be after 25 more years? But we never completely answered that question. What we did is we solidified down all the responses into the 6 buckets, which led to this great strategic plan, but we never said where it was that we were going directly. And we have this boat and we're all on it, and we need to know where it is we're going. I think the new leadership team that we've recruited most recently, as we talked about it, that was an important aspect that's missing, is what are we headed towards? And we're heading toward being the premier institution of our size, with these characteristics that I think would describe an urban serving university, but we want to be a little larger than that. Other question?
Hello, I'm Marissa Pedrich. I'm a librarian here. I have another question about the CEI move. I'm so glad to hear that you plan to work in partnership with the TLC and library moving forward. That's really comforting to hear. I'm curious about how you'll be supporting and facilitating that partnership so that all 3 of these units get their needs met.
Did you say how I'll be supporting facilitating?
Yeah, these are all really important student services on
Yes.
campus, and I think we'd like to hear about how we're all going to have our needs addressed in this process.
Well, that was the topic of our meeting yesterday morning. We realized that there's, not consternation, what's a better word? I have a horrible vocabulary. There's concern, anxiety. Is anxiety what we're suffering from here? There's anxiety around this, and we realized that very clearly yesterday morning. So I've charged Ty and Jill and other members of the team, let's work on this over the next month. So that was just yesterday morning. I don't know exactly what's going to be in place, but it's going to involve a lot of talking, putting pictures on the wall, thinking through these spaces. We want to optimize the uses of the spaces we have. And again, I've been here 3.5 years. Tioga is a lot of space over there that's not yet deployed, and this campus is squished for space over in this part of the campus. We need to deploy all of that space for the betterment of our students, and I just want that to happen. Here in the Pacific Northwest, we talk about things more than any place I've ever lived before, and that's hard on me, but it's fine. I moved here, so I'm part of this culture now, but we got to stop talking about it and do something, because our students came in at the same time I did, and they're graduating and haven't gotten to take advantage of this extra space we have on campus. So you'll be hearing more about it in the next few days, I'm sure. Carl.
I just wanted to jump in on the scholarship component because the data that was shown in the question that Cindy asked, and maybe, I don't want people to leave here feel like there's a ton of money that hasn't been spent. And so before the month of December is over, we'll send out the scholarship plan from this year, last year, and the year moving forward, because all three are kind of interconnected based on institutional aid that was given. And so if 1 year looks like something was underspent, it could be that you're holding money in reserves for the second year of a 2-year commitment that you made. And so if there's 150 first-time in college students that you say that you're going to give 2 years worth of scholarship funding for, the first year might be what we're seeing. And then the second year, you'll double because you have a new group coming in. So just we'll send that out before the month of December is over so everyone on campus can see what the scholarship plan is for institutional funding.
Good, thank you. That makes it clearer for me.
Go ahead.
Oh, okay. My question is regarding the CEI space. So once the CEI moves, what will happen to the old space they were holding?
Well, there is no decision about. Do you want me to answer that, Joe? I'm sorry, I took the
No,
question. Okay.
because I don't know. The answer is, from me, I don't know.
Well, there's no decision made about that as well. I'm sure everybody in this room would have a priority of what to use that space for. I have some ideas, but there's been no decision about that. But it will be utilized in the most optimum way to help students succeed in this campus. Yes.
As a student, just to let you know, we already have a limited space for students to study in. So, and also a lot of programs are already growing. For example, being freshman fellows, their space is already small enough. They actually need a bigger space. And my concern is, as the student population grows, we will have a limited space. So, do you have a plan or a solution to combat the rising numbers of students and how we have limited space over time?
I think that you've identified kind of the problem with that growing student population number. You saw about 4% a year is space. As that grows, without adding more that square foot number, then people get squeezed. And we're in this space right now where those things are starting to happen. I think they will happen more for the next few years. In one of those initiatives is kind of the master campus plan, and there's a new facility that is being planned, new building, to kind of help to free up more space on this campus for everyone, for all needs. But my anticipation is that it's going to get more squeezed in the short term, with a longer term plan to start to ease some of that. It's what happens when you kind of budgetarily grow student population and faculty population and all the things that go along with that, with within walls that exist that can't expand. So.
And actually, to even be more specific, there are 3 current projects in the pipeline that are going to increase space that are imminent. Joe mentioned the Academic Innovation Building is the biggest, 50,000 square feet, but we won't move into that for 4 years, and that's if we get the funding. So the funding is down at the state right now. The governor has endorsed it, but we need all of you to talk to your legislators. We need them to approve the funding for our Academic Innovation Center, which is 50,000 square foot building. It will have classrooms, it will have offices, it will have centers, it will have student space. And then we have a project that we hope to open in 3 years, which will be our next version of a campus residence hall. It's not designed, it's not even thought through what it would be, but we know that there's more living areas needed on campus, so we've activated that project. It may have some student spaces in it, it may have some eating spaces, it may have some union spaces. That will be 3 years, though, before we figure out what that is and get it designed, paid for, and opened. And then the third thing is the old Tioga, where Metro Coffee is. That space is very lowly activated right now. It has the Metro Coffee in it, and we rent some of it, but we have a plan in place to remodel that space and make it available for campus as well. So those 3 projects are imminent, and I've been pushing on them. It's like pushing something uphill. It's hard.
Yeah. So, and I'm watching the clock. Before you go, tomorrow is not Friday. Tomorrow is Pie Day. So for faculty here who have not planned well enough to go home and bake a pie tonight, Colleen, where's Colleen? Colleen and Ed are both collecting funds if you would like to contribute funds. And if you are coming to Pi Day, plan to come and contribute. Bring your $5 with you. I was going to ask you all to hold $5 bills above your head and then just have her walk up and down the aisle and collect them. Bring your funds with you to contribute to the combined fund. And let's all enjoy pie tomorrow. So, and see,
you have a question?
See Colleen.
Yeah.
Yes.
Hi, I'm Alan Bartlett. I'm a math faculty major coordinator and the math club advisor. And every year around Pi Day, which is March 14th, the students raffle off tickets for the students to throw pies in math faculty spaces. And this year, we're fortunate enough to host it for our first time on the actual Pi Day. Usually it's during finals week. And my students in the math club informed me that someone high up in the administration has offered themselves as a target for funding. And I would like to get the opportunity for you to comment on that. Is that correct?
Unfortunately, that is me, and yes, I told the young lady that I would be happy to do that. So.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
So, I would like to highlight an institution on this campus that I think is very important, especially this time of year. It's the pantry. They offer supplemental food and hygiene items for students on campus. Food insecurity is a significant and disproportionate problem that our students face. As a result of this, at UW Math is for social justice. And we feel that we can't ask for you to support them more if we don't do so ourselves. Yep. So we've taken half of all of our proceeds from this event and donated them to the pantry. And so because you're willing to participate, we're going to offer 100% of proceeds on your behalf to them. Wow. And I'd like to invite any deans or vice chancellors that are in attendance to also do so. Please contact Jennifer Quinn, and we'd love to get you on the ticket. So thank you very much for that. Details will be forthcoming. And lastly, just one thing, sorry to keep you further, but I don't want to sound like a broken record. I came here today to also represent the TLC as a faculty, and I want to be very clear to you that it is not just an academic space. I spend a significant amount of time there along with several faculty, and I had discussions with students about non-academic issues, dealing with learning disabilities, math and testing anxiety, dealing with family separation, divorce, child custody issues, mental, physical health issues, dealing with immigration anxiety, political, religious, and cultural isolation. I have these conversations with students who I have in my classes, who I have not had in my classes for years, who I've never had in my classes, and all of these discussions, including discussions about sexual assault, happen surrounded by students discussing academic and learning needs. It is impossible for me to envision a more accessible, equitable, and inclusive learning community on this campus than the TLC, and I'm very concerned that their needs are not being adequately supported and that their consideration is being done after the fact. They're being displaced to an undetermined location over an unspecified period. They're being told it's temporary, and I would like to consider that more significantly, please. Thank you.
Thank you.